Hey, good morning. How are you? How is your Friday? And how's your week been? Because, the weather's been kind of up and down and things are always busy. So I just want to check in with you to see how you're doing. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today is what are you thinking? Because on Fearless Friday, what I want to do is offer you some tips and suggestions and some facts that might help alter your beliefs to improve your life. And that's what I'm all about. I'm all about helping people. I'm all about having you be your best self, your best version of yourself, and to provide you with insight, because for every added insight that you gain throughout your life, there's an added responsibility that you have to apply that to your life. That way, you move forward and you don't stagnate. And it's all about moving forward, and it's all about helping people become their best self. So sometimes when we grow up and when we meet people, even day to day, there can be moments where you make this choice of thinking that you're ashamed of yourself or that you're not good enough. And there's actually hard science to demonstrate that this shame area in your brain actually closes down your ability to grow and to learn when it's activated. And so the hard part is that if you're in a space right now where you're feeling like you're not enough and you dwell on those negative feelings, it just perpetuates the loop. So the longer you stay in that thought loop of negativity, of self-doubt, and of shame, the longer you're going to stay there. By the very nature of the fact that physiologically, the way your body works, it's designed to do that. But you weren't made to be ashamed. There's nothing about you, nothing that you can do that would make you feel that you're not enough, you're not worthy, or that you're deserving of shame. So even if you don't believe it, you can borrow my belief for now, because trust me, you're enough. And the coolest thing about the brain is that it has this ability of neuroplasticity. So what do I mean by that? I mean that if you think of your brain as a piece of clay or wax, something that you can carve, if you were to carve a groove in the wax or the clay, over time, you're going to deepen that groove and it's going to become very smooth. So say, for example, if you were to drop a drop of water in this groove, it would flow very quickly from point A to point B, because you've created this groove and it's well worn and it's nice and smooth. So the pathway is quick and water will flow from point A to point B. A to B? I'm going to do that. A to B or A to B. We're going to go with this one. I'm going to go point A to point B. Okay. So when you're thinking from point A to point B, and you've got this well-worn path where thoughts travel down it, where experiences in your life and made-up stories in your head that you've told yourself that aren't even true help dig this path deeper, make it smoother, make it deeper, and then make your thoughts go quicker from A to B based on the stories that you've told yourself, based on different experiences, based on other people's insecurities, based on maybe somebody doesn't have your highest good in mind. And so every time you either make up a story, think of a story, think of an example, dwell in that space in your head, you're going to be able to go from point A to B very quickly. It's going to become a subconscious habit because you are primed. Your path is primed, and you're ready and expecting that flow of energy. So when you think, I'm not good enough, that you're off to the races. You're able to go from point A to B in 2.2 seconds or less. And the problem with that is you create those chemicals, you stimulate that shame center in your brain that holds you hostage. It keeps you from moving forward and stopping your growth. And it's not something you're consciously thinking of. This is how we're built as humans. This is a part of your body. And like other parts of your body, other muscles in your body that you want to exercise to change how your muscles feel, how your muscles respond, and the activities you're able to do, the same thing is true in your brain. And the coolest thing is that this concept called neuroplasticity, and there's not going to be a quiz, so don't worry about it. But what neuroplasticity is the ability to change the paths. So if you've already established a well-worn path from A to B, based on negative self-talk, based on self-hatred, based on shameful thoughts, based on feelings that you're inadequate, that you're not enough, based on the stories that you tell yourself that probably aren't true. When you decide and when you catch yourself on that path and you become an exercise brain ninja where you're able to identify when you're starting to have a negative thought, or maybe you become aware that you're not moving forward in your life and you're thinking, why aren't I doing that? And some of the hallmark signs can be you make excuses and you become afraid. Those, I think, are the biggest hallmark signs to know that there's something up. And maybe it's because of how you're thinking. So because of this great thing of neuroplasticity, when you catch yourself in those moments, you can actually create new paths. So for example, I grew up with an anxious parent, and I love her to death, but she was very anxious. And no judgment, it's just how it was. So I think I picked up some of that, as a little kid growing up. And it's an easy path to go down. When you start down this anxiety pathway, it's easy to go down because it's familiar. And especially if you've got somebody modeling that behavior, why wouldn't you pick it up? I mean, that's how we learn, So when I became aware of the effect that these thoughts had based on the old phrase about what's the worst that can happen. And so the psychology behind that is if you dwell on and you think about what's the worst that can happen, and then you kind of come up with a solution about how to survive the worst thing that can happen, and you come up with a solution that somehow that's supposed to make you feel better because you come to the conclusion, well, yeah, I can survive this event if it's the worst thing that can happen, so I can deal with whatever happens. Well, I think that's maybe well-meaning, but I think the problem is this. It creates an expectation in your head. When you start thinking what's the worst that can happen, you put that energy out there. And I think it's almost like you challenge the universe to be like, what's the worst that can happen? I'll show you what's the worst that can happen. And you start to attract people and situations that are not for your highest good. You start to attract energy and exchanges that challenge you to a point where you're thinking it is the worst that can happen, despite the fact that you can handle it. So what I learned to do was, as soon as I caught myself in a thought loop of thinking what's the worst that can happen, immediately change it up. Now, am I perfect at it? Absolutely not. Other days that it's quicker to go down the path than others, for sure. But when I am consciously aware that I'm going down a path that is familiar, and sometimes I even catch myself, I'm already there. That wasn't my intention, but just because the way my mind is built and has been built over the years, and because of the worn paths to go from point A to point B in my mind, I can go to a space. But I can also go to a space that as soon as I start to go from point A to point B and I recognize it, I can say, nope, changing it up. I'm going to say what's the best that can happen. And when I say what's the best that can happen, I set myself up energetically for all positive, for all good, for the abundance that there is in life. And so when I think what's the best that can happen, I shut down that pathway from A to B. I start to create a new pathway from A to B. This looks different. And when you create a new pathway over time, that's going to have the same quickness, speed, agility, immediacy, how fast it happens as the old pathway. And you have that ability. So on this Fearless Friday, I invite you to become aware of your thoughts, because your thoughts will become your reality. And you may think, oh, this is hogwash. I've heard this before, this law of attraction thing, this secret thing. It's not true. And if you've thought that, then aren't you really proving my point? Because if you've set up an expectation in your head that a law of attraction doesn't work, that creating positive energy doesn't work, that surrounding yourself with positive people doesn't work, then you've proven your point. Because you've put out so much energy into the universe that it's not going to work, that it doesn't work. And then the people that, like, they kind of crack me up. It's been years, say, and nothing goes right in their world. Everything is wrong. Everybody's to blame. They can't move forward, but it's not their fault. It's because the world is wrong. It's because people aren't trustworthy. It's because, this law of attraction doesn't work. I can think about good things and it doesn't work. It doesn't change things. Well, if you don't think that putting out positive energy into the universe is going to make it change, then why would the universe greet you with any positive change? The universe is going to meet you where you're at. What you think, you become. If you're at a point now where it's hard for you to think good things, recognize it, write it down, read the statements out loud, read them in the affirmative that it's already happened, and focus on the possibilities of abundance that you can bring into your life when you change your thinking, when you change your routine A to B to A to B, and you create new paths and you open yourself up to it. What's the best that can happen? The best that can happen is you start to live in the abundance that's meant for you. You start to attract people with the energy that's going to be for your highest good. You spend less time in the land of shame and you move it on up and you create a space where you can grow and learn and develop. And that's the thing. We're all interconnected, all of us. We all have a message, a voice to share. And if my words can help move you to brighten somebody else's day, to make a choice to get you into action, to entertain the thought that there's alternate ways to think and you're not trapped. And if you're anxious, there are ways to treat it that you can do, that counselors can do, but that you have the power. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. I'm dating myself. I remember looking forward to it in the spring. It would, be on, trying to think, it was like on a weekend, and maybe there was like 2 movies, but the Wizard of Oz was definitely something that I look forward to. And the whole deal when she clicks her heels 3 times and she goes back to Kansas, it's her realization that, there's no place like home, and she's always been there and always had this ability. I mean, that's what the Good Witch tells her. Glinda's like, you've had the ability all along, but if I told you, you wouldn't believe it. Well, I ain't no Glinda. I don't have the pink bubble. I do have a Christmas ornament, though. But you have the power within you. You do. And even if you don't feel it or see it, you still have that power. And so if you feel it a little bit, then exercise a little bit. It's just like a muscle. Changing your thoughts takes time, and it takes consistency, and it takes workouts and awareness. Just like if you were doing a hobby, I was a swimmer and a gymnast. I also ran, but that was short-lived. I did 2 half marathons and a full, and after the full marathon, I'm like, okay, I've done it. But embrace your awareness that you have some control over it. And if you practice every day, you're just going to get better. All right. So happy Fearless Friday. If there's some topics you want me to talk about, please send me a message or leave a comment below. I'm expecting to get a green screen, which is going to be kind of exciting, because then I can, when I do my classes on bees and I do my coaching and tutoring stuff, I can show pictures behind me, and that's going to be really interesting. And I look forward to doing that, because my mission is to help billions of people. That's just how it is. And that's why I do my side business with skincare, because I've seen it change people's lives. I've seen it change people's confidence. There's this one kid that I put on this regimen, and in like 4 months, his acne that was debilitating was no longer there. And so he became more social, and he's doing more stuff, and like, that's cool. And you have a unique voice, and so let others hear it. And I have a unique voice, and if it resonates with you, awesome. If not, that's okay too. I hope I provide value to you, and if there's anything I could do to help you, let me know, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great Friday and an awesome weekend, and I'll be back tomorrow.